Bro, and the fact that this is so like, in times of a pandemic,
Yeah.
like you're in your house, I'm in my space, like this is the safest way to kind of interact. But at the same time, it feels close, intimate, like it's very experimental, but it's working, man. So just like, again, huge high five going your way, bro. Like
Yeah, I
you're
appreciate
onto
that.
something here.
Thank you. I did want to ask you a few things as well. The Saturday Sesh. So you had me on there. Why don't you tell
Oh,
me a little bit
all right.
about how that started, and basically what your part was in that. I'm not sure if you're still.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful story, man. So Saturday Sesh, part of KHDC, which is Radio Bilingue. During the day, our local Radio Bilingue station will play segments coming out of different areas, some out of Mexico, some out of Fresno, which is Radio Bilingue's headquarters. So here in Salinas / Chular Salinas, we have an antenna that pretty much, amplifies voices of like migrant community, right? So like a lot of campesinos issues, field workers, kind of get informed. And again, it's kind of a network of not just Salinas, but it's like a global community of Radio Bilingual. Here in Salinas, we have a whole different variety. So we have programming in the afternoons that range from rock en español to reggae to hip hop to oldies to funk to freestyle to Hawaiian music to Tejano music to, I mean, it's all over the place. And that's what makes our community so vibrant and beautiful and special. So years and years ago, I was doing shows and I didn't really have somewhere to promote it other than local radio, right? So reaching out to the station, they were very welcoming. And not only did they allow me to come and like, talk about these events, mainly because they were free. Like that's one thing about Radio Bilingue is that it's like a nonprofit, it's public community radio. And so with that in mind, that's one of the clear differences between like commercial radio is that it's all kind of geared toward supporting community, building community, not really about making a dollar, but about bringing community together. Right. So mainly being able to promote free events and being able to promote all age events. So it was like hand in glove, perfect combination for bringing community together and doing it over an FM signal. So throughout the years, kind of came on the Wednesday Rec and backed up our local hip hop show. And I remember it was like early on, they asked me if I wanted a radio show. And I'm like, no, like I'm here to support. Like, I don't want to have an ego. I don't want to have like the Eme7 show or whatever. Like, no, like this is about community. And the more we work together, then hopefully the further we can go and support one another, right? Didn't want to create any kind of room for that kind of, ego, I guess, for lack of a better word. So eventually, 3 years ago, they asked again, very nicely, very, what's the word I'm looking for? They were a little bit more pushy. I don't want to say aggressive because it's always with love, but it's right. Like, hey man, if you don't help us out, we're going to lose the Saturday spot and it's going to go back to Fresno. We're not going to have a local on Saturday nights. Come on, just help us out. And I'm like, but I got a baby on the way, actually a third baby on the way at that point. And I'm like, my life's about to change completely again. And I don't know if I can take on that kind of commitment, responsibility. So what ends up happening, I reach out to my friends and ask if anybody else is interested. Anybody else want to help out with having a Saturday night radio show? So obviously I asked my closest friends, who happens to be one of my, best friends and neighbor. And, he's like, you know what, I have a baby on the way too. It's going to be impossible for both of us to do this. I'm like, all right, let's ask the next person. Let's ask the next person. Let's ask the next person. And out of everybody who's down, and that's something that I want to say, it's like, sometimes it's easy to talk the talk, but to walk the walk, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of commitment. And to give up your Saturday nights and to do, that kind of a commitment, it definitely takes a lot of work. So my respects and always sending love out to everybody that formed a part of the Saturday session, starting off with my first co-host, Cal Paradox, coming out of Salinas, California. And then, pretty much time goes on. He put in his 6 months, 9 months, and then we continue to carry the torch. Then we had Looney Lou come on. He was my co-host. And we actually did our last show together in December. So the current status of the Saturday session is it's kind of on a hiatus. It may come back at some point, but for the time being, if you tune in on a Saturday night, you're going to catch DJ Moy, who also has a reggae show on Wednesday nights. But on Saturday nights, he's doing kind of classic cuts is what he's calling it. So kind of like, a little bit of 80s music, a little bit of classic, I want to say throwbacks, kind of like lowrider cruising music type of vibe.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's going for.
Oh,
so that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the Saturday Sesh is going to continue to live on. I'm sure somebody else will be able to jump in if Moy's not able to do it later. But again, we just continue to pass the torch.
Nah, but I wanted to say, like, honestly, respect, and I appreciate what you did with the Saturday show. Honestly, there isn't anything really local that we have like that. We don't have any local voice that is recognizable. We have, the big top 40 stations, and they're amazing. You know, I love our local hosts and everything, but it's not a focus on our community. It's not a focus on local music, and you being that voice and showing up each time and knowing that we could actually like just, you know, flip to your station and hear a familiar voice talk about good music. It was really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate
it was
that.
great
Honestly,
to hear.
I'm going to just say one of the things, like, you know, again, this is the behind the scenes unplugged type of, I'm going to be really honest with you today. And that it takes us so much work to, you know, kind of curate a show like that.
Yeah.
You know, so the easy thing to do is like, just go look for what's new, right? And that's kind of what I defaulted to sometimes is just go check out the new releases. If somebody's tuning in, I don't want them to hear the same playlist, you know, the same 5 songs. My favorite 2 songs, right, for 3 hours. Like, that's not the way a radio show works. So it's about kind of keeping it fresh. But on the same note, and this is really important, especially for community radio, is putting the community into the radio. Yeah. Right. So like reaching out to the local artists, you know, and that's one of the things that I'm happy to say, like there's 100 episodes all archived. And if you want to go back and hear any of them, they're all there, 3 hours in their entirety. And they're all going to highlight different community voices. So again, that's one of the things that I'm the most proud about. The music's cool. It's beautiful music. You know, of course, I'm going to choose music that resonates with me. So it may or may not vibrate or resonate with other people. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a conversation in there with a local voice. And so you were one of our guests, right?
That was exciting.
You know, yeah, exactly. And that's a prime example where it doesn't necessarily have to be like pigeonholed into just hip hop artists. Like, no, this is a very vibrant community with so many different layers of knowledge, of expertise, you know, both from a very cultural kind of like do-it-yourself hip-hop level to, like, let's actually write curriculum and like, let's set a way forward for what can be done. So,
no, but honestly,
you know, that's kind of, go for it.
Yeah, honestly, even what you were doing, like, I remember we actually had to talk about that when we were in the studio doing the interview too. You were kind of like, almost talking down about like, oh, sometimes I do default to playing new music or things like that, but like
I feel bad about it.
No, that's like not something to feel bad about. It's perfect for the format. Like, you play music that people recognize, they get excited, they get into it. Then the next song, something they never heard before, and they're a new fan. You keep them with the familiar, and then you introduce them to the next person you're interviewing. You know, it's just like kind of the perfect way to format that. So even if it wasn't on purpose, I think it was a good way to do it, you know? No,
thank you for that. Yes.
Just like and with honestly, this show.
I kind of needed that type of like high five every now and then, because man, sometimes there's like, you wonder, right? Like, okay, you're doing the show. Like, is anybody out there? Is anybody even listening tonight? Right. No. And then you get that one caller that says, yo, thank you for playing, or, you know, can I give a shout out? And it makes it all worthwhile. Yeah. It's like, yo, cool. Like, you know, I didn't just waste my time up here with nobody tapping in or nobody feeling like, you know, this was a positive thing. So whenever people check in, like, that's what keeps us going, right? It's not really about monetary payment, but it's about just like showing love, showing support, you know, a quick share, a quick
with your
like,
show, it wasn't even about like even dropping into the radio show. Like, you were multi-format, especially more towards the end. Like, you were posting like, you know, Instagram live feeds and everything, and you could actually just drop in straight through your Instagram and see what's up and enjoy the show and see what your guest was up to and everything. So I feel like even when I couldn't listen to the radio or I wasn't in my car or something, you were still providing content, which is cool.
Yes, and that's actually kind of where you and I started to kind of connect again, because I think like we kind of go through these chapters in life where we kind of go into our own world and then we kind of connect back and then we kind of do our own thing. So I remember that I was using my phone to go on Instagram Live, and it was like the most ghetto / low budget method, right? I wrote the artist's name on a piece of paper and I aimed my phone at the piece of paper, and I was just like streaming that. That's it. Like, that's what you get.
But am I wrong to think that that's so hip hop?
No, I think
it looked hip hop.
It obviously gets the job done, right? The main reason I was doing that, and even like this, honestly, it takes guts. Like, I'm sweating. Like, I don't know if you can tell how shiny I am, but
that's funny.
It's like, it is so nerve-wracking to get in front of a camera. Right. Like, I don't really mind doing the microphone thing because rocking with the band and doing so many open mics throughout decades now. Of course, there's confidence with that, but in front of a camera, I'm still like iffy. I'm like, I don't know how the lighting should be. I don't know if I should put a green screen, whatever, right? Like, all these different things that I'm still venturing into. But the point being that it's like, I started with just pointing my phone at a piece of paper, and you made the comment, hey bro, like, I get what you're doing, but like, you know, a lot more technology, bro. Come on, like, you can do better than that. And now I see what you're doing, and I'm like, yo, like this is kind of, in a weird way, I feel like this is what you were envisioning. No, well, that's what I needed to hear in the moment, right? So it's actually a good thing, yeah. And yeah, it just goes back to that, bro. It's like what you're doing right now is kind of like the perfect kind of like segue, like the next evolution. Because again, not everybody's really tuning into a radio. Not everybody's like, you know, able to jump in the car or whatever, right? Like radio is definitely going to serve its purpose, and I don't want to knock it, but I feel like with technology moving the way it's moving, it's less and less likely. Like we're not even able to get a CD player anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like
radio's super difficult, and the people that do have radio stations, they have their presets, and that's what they're listening to, you know?
Yeah. So putting it out there again, that is 90.9 FM here in Salinas, California, and that's community radio. It's pretty much right up there with college radio, and you know, I mean that's what it's all about, right? It's kind of like supporting the left side of the dial. A lot of those kind of stations are going to be local.